Now to President Obama's big day at the United Nations. He's speaking to the General Assembly this morning and is also meeting with the Palestinian president and Israeli prime minister, hoping to head off a confrontation over Palestine's bid to join the UN. Reporting this morning on the president's foreign policy are Mark Phillips in Ramallah and Elizabeth Palmer in Libya. But we start with CBS News senior White House correspondent Bill Plante, who is traveling with the president this morning. Bill, good morning.
Good morning to you, Chris. The White House has had no luck trying to dissuade the Palestinians in their bid for statehood. The president will make another attempt today when he meets with Mahmoud Abbas. It's doubly embarrassing for the president because of the vision that he laid out here at the UN last year.
And when we gather back here next year, we can have an agreement that will lead to a new member of the United Nations, an independent, sovereign state of Palestine living in peace with Israel.
But a year later, the president's vision of Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace is still just a dream. And the administration says that's not his fault.
The point that the president will make is, at the end of the day, peace is going to have to be made between the parties, that it can't be imposed from the outside, that it can't be accomplished through actions at the United Nations.
President Obama campaigned on a promise to reorient U.S. foreign policy, and he promised the Arab world a new beginning. But the mixed U.S. response to the democracy movements across the Arab world, support for rebels in Tunisia and Egypt, but siding with rulers in Bahrain, and the threat to veto Palestinian statehood in the UN Security Council has all taken a toll. A Pew survey last spring showed the president unpopular in the Muslim nations polled and showed disapproval for the way he handled the Arab uprisings. Former U.S. Mideast negotiator Aaron David Miller says the problem is that the president raised expectations, then couldn't deliver.
President Obama was a different kind of politician. He was viewed by many as a transformative political figure. He was going to solve the Arab-Israeli conflict. He was going to engage Iran. None of it happened.
Mark Quarterman, a former UN official, says the reality is that there's a limit to what President Obama can do.
Any U.S. president's ability to influence events around the world is probably more circumscribed than many Americans think.
But President Obama will try to use some of that influence today in his meeting with Abbas, making the case to him and also to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, no love lost there, that it's in their interest to talk rather than have the Palestinians declare statehood independently. Chris?
CBS's Bill Plante at the UN for us this morning. Bill, thank you.
Want to check in now on the West Bank, where we find CBS News correspondent Mark Phillips. He's in the town of Ramallah. Mark, what is the reaction from Palestinians this morning as they learn more about Mr. Obama's foreign policy?
Good morning, Erica. It would be hard to think of a time in history when the U.S. has had less influence on Middle Eastern affairs than it's having right now. And this demonstration, really a celebration or rally that's been going on all day here in Ramallah, is a very good illustration of that. This has been organized in support of the Palestinian statehood bid, something the U.S. had tried desperately and unsuccessfully, as we've just heard, to stop. This is also a sign that the Palestinian street is being brought along with the Palestinian leadership. It would be virtually impossible, political suicide, if you will, for President Abbas to turn his back now on the statehood bid. That will, barring anything extraordinary, happen in the UN when he makes his speech on Friday. But already the signs of trouble are here. On the Israeli side, particularly in the very right-wing settler movement, there have already been stirrings, there have already been confrontations, and there's a real concern here that without the U.S. to act as a kind of rudder through the area, that this ship of Middle Eastern policy is really out of control. Again, today there were demonstrations at one of the major crossing points just south of here into Jerusalem. Israeli soldiers and Palestinian youths confronting each other, and that is a situation that is very worrying and the one that might well continue. Erica?
And the one that we'll be watching closely. Mark Phillips in Ramallah this morning. Thanks.
In his speech this morning, the president also focuses on Libya, announcing the U.S. will reopen its embassy there now that Muammar Gaddafi is no longer in control. CBS News correspondent Elizabeth Palmer is in Tripoli, Libya for us this morning. Liz, did the Libyans see the President Obama's policy as a success there?
Good morning, Chris. Well, yes, although Colonel Gaddafi hasn't been caught yet, Libya does look like a very welcome success story, at least on the face of it. There are still sporadic pockets of fighting, but in the last 24 hours, government forces were able to take back one of the last 3 areas of the country that are still under Gaddafi loyalist control. Yesterday, President Obama was able to meet the new head of the Libyan transitional government at the UN in New York and take credit for the U.S. role in helping to get rid of Colonel Gaddafi through what you might call his version of the coalition of the willing. That is that America joined the NATO mission, but in the backseat. It allowed France and Britain to take the lead. So yes, in a word, a success, and I would guess a very welcome one. Chris?
CBS's Elizabeth Palmer in Tripoli, Libya, for us this morning. Elizabeth, thank you.